Good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing today? Michael Zuber, author of One Rental at a Time. And well, since I put out my video on the San Francisco real estate market, we have now had a second lockdown. As I've been looking at the San Francisco economy, I've been pulling some numbers together. I'm not sure it's clear to most people just how painful the first lockdowns were. So we're going to talk about them here. We're going to make some estimates, some guesses, some predictions of the future that are just that. They're predictions, they're guesses. But at least they're educated. They're at least done with good intentions. And kind of as the title of this video says, I believe the San Francisco economy with this second lockdown is going into what one might assume is a nuclear winter. When I say that, I don't mean it in jest. It was already horrible. It wasn't bad. It was horrible. This second lockdown is going to take the wind out of the sails of so many. And I believe San Francisco government, San Francisco leadership will need to think about bankruptcy to bail out their economy. Their cost structure was built for 2019. The 2019 economy was booming in San Francisco. They had likely record tax receipts. They had made huge inroads in collections. And then 2020 happened. The first lockdown. Now a second lockdown. So these are some notes I have from the first lockdown just to show you how painful it was for the San Francisco economy. And I share these as a real estate investor. I share these as a California resident. I share this as someone who worked in San Francisco right there on 2nd and Branham. So a couple of things to appreciate. First, the first lockdown was so painful, and so few small businesses in San Francisco were prepared with cash reserves. They operated on ridiculously thin margins because San Francisco is expensive. 40% of small businesses by the third month of the lockdown had closed for good. That's an amazing number. The boarded up stores, the restaurants, the small mom and pop retail, beauty salons, gyms, barbershops, just a travesty. 40% of small mom and pop businesses shut in the first wave. Tax revenue collections, from sales tax to gas tax to income tax to property sales, took a massive, massive hit in the first lockdown. Landlords, 30% drop in the first lockdown. Vacancies at crazy levels. Non-payment at ridiculously high levels. Listings. People want out of San Francisco. The listings in San Francisco are up 100%. And this is in a national real estate market that is on fire. San Francisco is in trouble. Probably the greatest and most telling story of the first lockdown is, as I mentioned a couple of times, San Francisco is pretty small on a population basis when you compare it to New York City and the like. San Francisco counts roughly 900,000 residents as living in the city. Well, 89,000, almost 90,000 have left. Change of address, moved out of the city, moved to Vegas and Florida, where the top two markets or top two states. Yes, there was some movement. About 35,000 people moved within San Francisco, likely upgrading their apartments or maybe going from an apartment to a house. But 10% of the population left. I propose that most of that population was high income earners. I don't think you see 90,000 people leave for Vegas and two cities in Florida that aren't going to either city because of state taxes. So if you assume 60, 70% of those 90,000 are the high income earners in San Francisco, you've got a gigantic hole in the local budget that would have been difficult to fill regardless. Then you have office space. You have a company, Pinterest, paying nearly $90 million to break an office lease. You have more office empty today than any time, including the Great Recession. You have more office space up for sublease than any time, including the Great Recession. It is not a good time for San Francisco. And now, as of the last 24 hours, San Francisco has entered a very restrictive second lockdown. So, what happens? Well, small and medium-sized businesses tried to get through, tried to hold on, the first one. Probably did okay in the summer as we all started feeling better and you had local patronage. Probably okay. But can they survive again? And it's exactly the worst time, right? We all know that the holiday season is the best month for most businesses. They're going to lose December. They're going to lose Christmas shopping. Amazon's going to win, and the local retail establishments are going to lose. So why hold on? Give up. Stop dipping into their savings. Stop hoping for a miracle. How many are going to give up now? If you assumed heading into this crisis there was 100 and you lost 40, right? 40%, there are 60 businesses left. I'm going to guess 50% of the remaining 60 give up in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Wouldn't you? Can you imagine? You've been held on. You got through the summer. You're excited about the holidays. You probably bought inventory for the holidays because you got to buy this stuff early, folks. And now you're shut. You're shut down. Next up, rents. Rents are a demand-driven business. How many people want to live through that again? You lived through it one time. You felt good in the summer. You probably had a good time walking on Embarcadero and all the great things of the city. But now you're frozen in place. How many people go, I've had enough? How many people go, you know what? I'm going to move just around us, Napa, Santa Rosa, who knows? But how many people go, you know what? Screw it. I'm going out of state. I have had enough of what California is doing. I'm going to go to one of those other states that's not so locked down. I'm going to propose that this is another needle, another kick in the pants for people to leave San Francisco. It's unfortunate. I think vacancies are going up. The other thing that is really painful is you've already seen the 90,000 people leave, which again I propose is mostly the rich. San Francisco has a huge service population that has already suffered undue harm. They are likely renters, and now their landlords are being hit with undue harm. No fault of their own, as you always hear. Rents are down, non-payment is up, evictions are going up. No, federal government is failing miserably. They still have to pay their debt. I still had property taxes were still due on the 10th of December. Gavin Newsom is nice enough to say renters don't have to pay, but he wants his property tax revenue. How many people are going to default on their property tax revenue? There was a conversation about New York, 1 in 7 landlords. I'm going to guess San Francisco is more like 1 in 5. That's a pure guess. I think San Francisco, mom and pop, call it less than 20 units, more pain than New York. It is going to be a nuclear winter. It is going to be hard. Listings. If you are looking to sell a San Francisco home, you have a mountain of competition in perhaps the worst market I have ever seen to sell. We're already at 100% growth year on year. It's going to get worse. I could see 25, 30, 35% drops in San Francisco proper, not the larger Bay Area, San Francisco proper. What happens if listings go up another 25, 50, 100% by the middle of January? It could happen. Supply, days on market increase, more inventory, price drops, nobody's going to open houses. It's going to be bad. So in the end, I think San Francisco had a huge budget deficit already. They probably didn't know how to handle it already. They probably were counting on the federal government to give them money. The second lockdown has made it impossible. I don't know how they get out. They either A, get money from the federal government, or B, go bankrupt. I think it will be that bad. But lastly, I do want to end on a slightly positive note. If you have ever thought about investing or owning in San Francisco, good news. I think in the next 18 to 36 months, you're going to have an opportunity. I think where there is pain, there is opportunity. I think the pain, I don't even think the pain has really begun. I think all of the self-injuries from the first shutdown have just started to be felt, but they are going to be compounded in this next shutdown. But again, if you've ever thought about owning a primary or a rental in, or an office or a storefront in San Francisco, I think you're going to be excited by what's out there in 2022. I think 2021 is a year of pain. It's a year of reset. It's a year of licking wounds. It's a year of either bankruptcy or borrowing hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government. I don't know where San Francisco goes, but this second shutdown is going to be more painful than the first. It's just unfortunate. But if we can look up, we can look out past this, there will be opportunity. Again, the Great Recession was horrible. It was very painful. But if you could look up and look to 2010, it was a pretty good year to make once-in-a-lifetime purchases. And I think San Francisco could have once-in-a-lifetime purchases. But you got to get through this horrible, painful moment. That's what I think. Take care of yourself. Let me know what you think below. Have fun. Take care. Have a